Hi, welcome to another endorsement interview with the Times Editorial Board. With us today are Shelli VanDenburgh, actually the incumbent Democrat for State Representative in District 19, and Julie Olthoff, the Republican candidate. I'm Doug Ross, editorial page editor. Also in the room with us, we have Bob Heiss, editor, Krista Zavanovic, assistant managing editor, and on the other side of the lens, Brian Vernellis, our videographer. Why don't we start with giving us a little bit of your, kind of a quick recap of your background and what qualifies you for the office. Julie.
Hello. I own an advertising agency in Maryville for 27 years. And in that time, I've been on so many boards, including Plan Commission and BZA appointments over the last 10 years. And twice appointed chairman of the board of, one time the Maryville Chamber of Commerce and then now the Crossroads Chamber of Commerce. And then most recently, really as part of being chairman of the board of the Crossroads, we initiated the Lake County Economic Alliance, which I'm sure you've heard of. And so my board was the one who helped institute that with the Lakeshore Chamber. So now it's rolling. I'm really proud of that.
Okay. Shelli.
And I'm State Representative Shelli VanDenburgh, and I started out in county government as the Child Support Director of the Clerk's Office for 18 years. I was approached to run for a township board seat early on because I had said that I wanted to become more involved in politics. I had two small children at the time, ages 3 and 7, and ended up running for township board, was the first ever woman or Democrat elected to the township board. And then shortly after that, our current state representative at the time had resigned, and everyone was asking me to put my name in the hat. And I thought, why are they asking me? Because there were all these other big names in there and people that were really what you'd call a politician. And I'm more of a public servant. And they asked me for 3 weeks, and finally I decided to discuss that with my husband, and he said, well, Shelli, you got involved because you wanted to make a difference, and what can you really do on the township board? After serving for 6 months, I put my name in the hat. Everyone dropped out, and I was told to go downstate and file my papers for state representative. Since that time, I have been reelected to the position 3 times. I have served for 7 years, and I currently am the director for the state of Indiana for Women in Government. I also serve on the Council of State Governments Economic Development Commission, which is a nationwide economic development committee. I've served on the House Education Committee for 7 years. I serve on Commerce Economic Development Committee for several years, I think about 5. And then I also serve on the Utilities Committee as well.
Okay, well, I'm glad you mentioned economic development, because the one thing that's on everybody's minds this year is job creation. So, Shelli.
Well, I'm very lucky in the fact that in the years that I've been in the General Assembly, especially the last 5 years, we've passed multitudes of legislation to create jobs in Indiana. And as a Democratic member of the House, I have supported most of those initiatives. Nearly all of them. The only one I did not support was, of course, right to work. I feel the jobs are very important. We need to do all we can for small business. I was one of 2 Democrats in the House that also supported the corporate tax cut the first time, which was about 3 years ago, because I thought if we can make Indiana a better place to do business, of course, keep taxes down for small businesses and corporations, that could spur job growth. So I have been one of the legislators that helped Indiana become one of the 7 most business-friendly states in the nation. And I'm very proud of that. Really, we've done so much for business. It's time to focus on people.
Okay. Julie.
Well, of course, I agree with Shelli a lot in what the legislation has done over the last few years. But there's a lot more to do. And when you look at the statistics for unemployment rates in Lake County, we hit the all-time low in August, 7.7% unemployment in Lake County. That makes us the last. So we were teetering bottom third, bottom second, and now for August, we are the worst county in the state for jobs. So there's much more to do. And my involvement with that Lake County Economic Alliance uncovered the fact that when companies approach the state, there's a database that they send them. Well, Lake County hasn't been putting our properties in that database, and that's one of the things the Alliance is going to do. And so when companies approach us, here we go, we can actually send them, leads up here and property. If I'm elected, I'm going to meet with Karen Lauerman and Don Kalabowski right away and see what else there is that we can do. And another thing on my mind is something I found out just with a client. It took him 11 weeks to get a state building permit, and we talked about that in the primary. That's crazy. 11 weeks to get a state building permit is too slow. So if we're serious about getting jobs, we need to figure out what's holding him up. Like, you can take care of things up here, but what's happening boots on the ground for people that actually want to get their businesses going?
Okay. Shelli mentioned people. So what would you do to help people specifically?
People. Well, I want to find out what people want, especially in my district. So I'm going to go on a learn tour and actually meet with the superintendents, the plan commission people, planning offices in the cities. I want to hold public forums all the way through if I get elected to really hear from people. When you're knocking on doors, and when I knock on door, my little 30-second commercial is about job growth, and so many people nod their heads. So to me, that is huge. Like, we all feel it.
Okay, Shelli?
Well, the number one issues in my district are jobs and education. As the state representative for the last 7 years, I have held 13 public meetings. I've met with the Superintendent's Association, multitudes of groups. I am always accessible to the people in my district. I put my home phone number on all of my literature, my personal email. People are surprised when they call that number and I say hello. And sometimes they're making dinner, but continue to talk with them. As far as what we can do for people in our state, we focused immensely over the last several years on corporations and businesses. I feel right now that we need to really look at what our families need from state government. There's been tremendous cuts over the last several years to mental health. Of course, our healthcare system. The people in our state are being deprived all of the benefits from the Affordable Care Act. I'm not very happy with Governor Pence and his decision not to move forward with the Affordable Care Act. There are many people that have been denied health care because of our HIP program. And now, of course, the second plan has been rejected. I think that our federal government has concerns about how much money the governor and the other side of the aisle want people in our state to pay. We're talking about folks that are indigent and need assistance. We have created job training programs, but we haven't looked at what families need. Families need to be able to pay less taxes too. We need to make sure that we're doing the most we can with the taxes that they pay. Sitting on a $2 billion surplus is not family friendly. I mean, those dollars should be utilized, or they should be returned to our taxpayers, not hoarded by our state. I'm all for a balanced budget. We've had a balanced budget every year that I've been in the General Assembly. But $2 billion, that is an excessive amount that we could be putting to work in our state. People are getting in accidents because of our roads. People are breaking tie rods on their cars. I mean, these things cost the people in our district money, and we need to ensure the roads are safe. We need to ensure that they have money in their pockets so that they can take family vacations and, make memories with their children. Where are the tax cuts for the people of our state?
Okay. Shelli, you started to mention roads. That's, something INDOT says, we're going to fall farther and farther behind at the current rate we're going. So what do you do?
Well, we have $2 billion that we can put into our roads. We can also allocate money to our counties, maybe as a match program. We'll give you X amount of dollars, and then they need to come up with the other half, to do major road projects. We still have the Klein Avenue Bridge, Doug. I mean, we've been talking about this for, 5 years, maybe more, 6? I know it was early on when I came in, and it's very frustrating. That's a main thoroughfare to where most of the folks in our district work, up at the mills and BP.
Okay, Julie?
For transportation, it's true we need more money on roads, and they just allocated this past year, right? More money for roads, and it went to major highways from the state. So I agree that there's more to do, especially on the bridge concern. This is the budget year, so to fight for more money for transportation is always a good thing and feeds right into economic development needs.
Okay. Now here's the tough question. How much of a surplus do we really need, Julie?
I'm new to this process. I believe we do need, and even to call it a surplus might be a misnomer. It's a savings for if something happens, or anything could happen these days between Ebola and terrorism and who knows what else might just tank our economy as fast as we saw it with 911. So to have a little bit in the bank, I think, is wise. We all do that in our households if we can. We have certain set aside. So I don't want to get rid of it all. But to answer how much is that amount, I don't think I can answer that at this point.
Okay. Shelley?
Well, I'll just take the easy way out and say $1 billion is a heck of a lot of money. If we have $1 billion in the bank and we put $1 billion into our economy, or return dollars to the people of our district in the form of income tax cuts, or income tax cuts to our elderly who are in poverty. People that are 65 years and older, should they really be paying income taxes on money that they've put away, for a rainy day and for when they're ready to retire? There's a lot that we can do with that money, that would maybe, give the people at home help that they need. Maybe they need a savings. I don't think that we actually earn interest on that money, as well. We're earning interest on taxpayer dollars. At some point you need to really draw the line.
One of the things that, we're headed into a state budget year, the 2-year budget, and since the last budget was passed, the agency CC, it's been called the Shadow Department of Education. It's for education and workforce issues, and the State Board of Education's relied heavily on that. Do you think that should remain in the budget, and what do you do about the impasse between the Superintendent of Public Instruction and the State Board? Shelley?
I'd like to see the members of the State Board elected by congressional district. Also, I think that the agency that was created, really, it should have gone through the legislature. We're talking about salaries in excess of $100,000 in some cases per person that is on that board. So this is a lot of money that the governor decided to appropriate all on his own, and those things should be coming through the legislature, so that we have an accounting of what is happening, where the dollars are going. I did read the salaries on the House floor one day during session, just so that people and the news media would become aware of how much money the governor decided to put in creating an agency to work against our superintendent. And it is very political, and it's very unfortunate. However, Glenda Ritz was elected. She was elected with more votes than our governor. And the reason that happened is because people in our state were not happy about the things that were happening in education. That's why you saw the influx of voters come out and elect her so strongly. And this will all come back to haunt our governor, I feel, in 2 years when he runs for re-election. Because those folks that elected Glenda Ritz are not going to forget how horribly she's been treated and disrespected. And it may not be so easy for him to run for governor again. He may need to run for president.
Okay, Julie?
for education, I think we all want the same things. We all want good education for our kids. In our district, education is pretty good. What I'd like to see from the leadership in any of the, from Glenda or the school board, the teachers union, is a plan to turn around our poverty schools. And how is that going to work? So instead of bickering about little things, let's get to the point and say, let's all put our heads together and figure out how can we turn around an F grade school. I think that just because Glenda got all those votes doesn't put her in charge. The governor is still in charge, but they have to respect each other and work together. And I think they're getting better at that. When you read news reports, one article will say they are, one article will say they're not. And so I think there's been some headway in that issue, but I'd like to see us just get to the nitty-gritty of it, because we want good kids coming out of school. That CECI organization that was built for trades, it was explained to me that was to help graduates who maybe aren't college bound fill the gap on how do you take them into the trades to get a job. We need that sorely. We need welders, we need carpenters, we need more people to get out there. And as building is coming back like it is, we're going to need those trades once again. And frankly, I think there's a void there, and that's why it was created. So I'm all for that. Where it falls under the hierarchy, I'm not completely sure, but Board of Education seems to be a good fit.
Okay. One of the things coming up is reauthorization of the Regional Development Authority. It's getting $10 million a year in state funding. And now there's going to be, many of the things have been addressed already, the Marquette plan and so forth, but, we're hearing that there are other priorities coming up. What do you think we should do? Shelli, let's start with you.
Well, they've always had a line item in our budget, and now what Senator Kenley, who is chairman of the Finance Committee, says that he wants, just like everyone else in our state, the RDA to bring initiatives to the board, state budget board, and ask for money for each project. I'm sad to see the funding go away, the permanent funding that we were receiving, but we are going to have to put our heads together and look for different ways, perhaps, of funding the RDA.
Okay. Julie?
I'm completely for funding the RDA, and will fight for it as much as I can.
Okay. What about South Shore Extension?
I'm for South Shore Extension all along. I see it as an economic development engine, even to bring, how everybody knows you get paid more in Illinois and Chicago jobs, to bring those dollars back to our state is really good for our economy.
Okay, Shelli?
I also support the South Shore expansion. Also, I've looked for ways and done a study already on how to perhaps get some funding to the RDA, and to be able to fund the initiative that our great congressman has put forth. I believe that this is Pete's legacy, and he's done an amazing job bringing federal dollars back to Lake County in Northwest Indiana, and I'm very proud to support that.
Okay. I should ask if Bob and Krista, if you have questions.
Well, the recent meeting on early childhood, it was brought up that if you have $1 or whatever money you have, at the state level, you should put it into early childhood. Are you a supporter of obviously Lake County's taken a bit of a lead here, but do you support as much as can be done for early childhood?
Absolutely. I was so proud when that Indianapolis state rep brought forth that legislation, because that's how you get out. The only way to me out of the poverty situation is education. So if we could have a pilot program up here, it only makes it all better, and maybe the first step to turning around some of the bad schools.
Shelli?
As a member of the Education Committee, I actually was one of the primary co-authors of legislation passed this year. In fact, I was the primary Democratic co-author and worked very closely with Chairman Boehning, and fought very hard to remove a component that would provide vouchers to private school, which was something that was going to cost our state quite a bit of money. And it didn't need to be there. Both sides supported early education. The Democratic Party has always been a huge proponent of early education, and I was very glad to see over the last several years that our Republican friends have also got on board with early education. 3 years ago, I was also the co-author of the Early Childhood Learning Commission. We put together groups of early education folks from around the state to kind of put their heads together and figure out a way for us to move early education forward in our state, and then they had to report back to us. And we heard from them actually this year, and then also last year we put together a piece of legislation that looked at early education and children in poverty and how that was working around our state. There's a very important component that I'm very proud of. There's a parental component in the legislation we passed this year. It says that if you want the state funding to put your 4-year-old into a Pass to Quality Level 3 or 4 program, which means there is some type of a curriculum, it's structured, it's not just a daycare program, that you have to abide by the parental engagement component, which means you have to be present in your child's education. And that is very important for people that are living in poverty to engage early in their children's education. We want to, be assured that these children will be moving on the right path and have the support system at home throughout their educational career. And hopefully we will be keeping our youth out of juvenile centers and also jails in the long run. So the early dollars invested early on should prove well for our state.
Okay. We're talking budget issues all along, but what's your primary budget goal, Julie?
Well, 2/3 of our budget is education, so that is probably the primary line item to keep an eye on, plus transportation and roads. I haven't honestly looked at every line item in the budget. I do believe in a balanced budget with no tax increases. Lake County has been hit too hard with tax increases this past year, a couple years. So keeping it even keeled is good for me.
Okay, Shelli?
There's so many different things that you want to focus on. However, our public schools still are suffering from a huge hit that they took several years ago. Hundreds of $millions was taken out of our public school system, which has caused increased class sizes. I know my daughter last year had a class size of 42 children in Crown Point, which is absolutely ridiculous. We need to do something about class size. It will help the children learn better in a smaller class environment. And also, we're, as you see, all kinds of referendums are popping up all over the state, which is causing an excess tax burden on folks that thought they were going to be getting a tax cut when we capped the property taxes. Those folks have seen different communities now put in different fees for different things. They're being feed to death. Can I say that? And then also, they're suffering from the referendum. So we need to put that money back into public education for sure, and make sure that they're on the right track.
Okay, one of the feed to death reminded me, as we're talking about education, is the idea of the state finally paying for the textbooks instead of the parents. What do you think?
I don't have a problem with that if we can find the funding for it. But when I read it wasn't fair to parents who have kids in private school, that was a little offensive to me, because part of their tax dollars does go into the school system, and on top of it, they pay private schools as well.
Okay.
Well, I feel like that's their choice. Like Julie said earlier, we have great schools in our district. Crown Point has been a 4-star school for years. I'm very proud that I'm a graduate. My children are a graduate of Crown Point. My parents are 3 generations, from Crown Point, all through the Crown Point school system. And if you choose to put your children in private school, then that's your choice to pay those fees. I also have a problem with the vouchers being awarded to parents who live in schools that are high performing. Really, other than religion, there is no reason for them to be then going to a private school when they're offered an excellent education in our public schools. We just need to make sure that we're focusing on the families, and the textbooks is definitely a great way to do that. I authored legislation 3 different times. It was never heard to do away with the textbook fees, or at least allow the parents to deduct it on their income taxes, because private school parents and parents of homeschoolers are allowed different deductions in Indiana for books, backpacks, all kinds of supplies, uniforms, which public school parents are not. So I would love to see that go forward. It's about time.
Okay. Well, what's the primary difference between you and your opponent who's sitting right beside you, Julie?
Definitely I'm more on the conservative side of things. I think I come from a strong business background. I like to point out that just because I'm a Republican doesn't mean I'm not for unions. I live in a union home. I was raised in a union home. I was brought up in Lake County, so it's part of our culture here. I know that's not a difference, but I like to point it out. So I think on social issues, I would tend to be more conservative.
Okay, Shelli?
Well, I'm a fiscally conservative Democrat. Yes, I guess I am more socially liberal. While I support pro-choice, I'm not pro-abortion, so I am conservative in that aspect, and think it shouldn't be used in all cases. I'm someone who I'm not a business owner. I know the different levels of government. I've worked in now 3 different levels of government, so that's something that I bring to the chamber. Is I understand the needs at every level, and also I have 2 children. And I don't believe that Julie has any children. So, having 2 children in a public school system, I'm right there hands-on, and I know what those families need.
Okay. Is there anything that we didn't ask that we should have? Shelli?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. Julie?
There is one more platform item of mine, and it's women's issues. So 1 in 6 of our teenage girls is assaulted or raped. And that's just unacceptable to me, and that's the state of Indiana statistic, not the nation. And this past legislature did pass a study, and I want to make sure that that study isn't just a binder that ends up on a shelf somewhere. I want to make sure that we really take a look at it and see what can we pull out of it and learn to bring just tighter controls on how can we stop this epidemic. It's not good. It's unacceptable to me.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. This has been an endorsement interview with Shelli VanDenburgh and Julie Olthoff, both candidates for State Representative in District 19. Thank you for viewing.